Hello, my name is Donald Capers, and welcome to The Advocator. Today, we'll be talking about environmental issues, soil, things of that nature. So, if you're interested in planting, growing your own vegetables, or other herbs and spices, please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Can you tell which of these children was not born free? Can you tell which of these children was not born equal? Can you tell which of these children does not deserve to be treated with dignity? We can't either. Human right number one. We are all born free and equal. What are human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
Hey, and welcome back. Thank you for coming back. Once again, I'm Donald Capers. You are watching The Advocator. Today, I have on the show Marlene Liberty. She is a master gardener. So we're going to talk to her about that right now. Hello, Marlene. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So what is a master gardener?
A master gardener is a person who has gone through a course offered by Cornell Cooperative Extension through the university, through Cornell University. We are volunteers. We're strictly volunteers. We are part of a land-grant college, and the land-grant colleges are part of something that was formed in the 1800s. If you've watched old television stories, you've seen the county extension agent, and he advises what to do with your cows and sheep, cattle, and corn and whatever. And Cornell is part of that program, and they send us out to teach. We are teachers. We don't garden for people, and we dispense information to the public. Very good.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. So I'm so happy you're here today. I hear a lot of things on the news and a lot of different products being sold about planting your own vegetables and things of that nature. What's one of the things that maybe someone who wants to start planting their own food, what's one of the things they should watch out for?
Well, especially in the city. If you have bought one of the lots that the city will sell you or rent to you, if you're an urban gardener, even a suburban gardener, there could be contaminants in the soil. Lead in particular is what we're talking about today, and lead poisoning is a big thing nowadays, and people are very aware of it. It causes neurological damage, kidney damage. It causes slow learning. It can cause autism. It can cause poor muscular development, and this affects not just children, but adults. And because of the products that have come to us from other countries that have lead in them, we've decided to take a look at our own products that have lead in them, which is all paint, which was made before 1978. And because they are tearing down many houses in the city, they are renting those lots out, and people are starting to grow vegetables, as you said.
Right.
And when that happens, you have to be aware that there could be lead in that soil, because that house that was torn down has paint.
Right.
And the paint that you're getting, and people seem to think that children who get lead poisoning are chewing on lead particles. This is not true.
That's what I was going to ask
This
about.
is not true. You can, but that's not the primary source of it. The primary source of it is dust. And if you are going to plant a garden on one of those lots, there's sure to be something in the soil that you don't want in your vegetables, and we recommend at Cornell, we recommend raised garden beds. And
okay, well, what is a raised garden bed?
a raised garden bed is exactly that. It's usually 10 to 12 inches deep, and you don't have to have sides on it. But what we do suggest is that you put down something called a cloth. It's a cloth that is penetrable. It will let water go through, but it will not It will not let the contaminants go up. The grass roots don't grow through, the roots don't grow through it. They stay contained. And you're going to fill that with a good mix of compost and topsoil, and mostly compost. The more compost there is in soil, the less contaminant, the less the lead is absorbed through by the plants. Many of the vegetables that you grow can be used to actually, they can actually be used to purify the soil. You can take that lead out, but the only problem with that is, once you take those vegetables, you don't want to eat them. You want to throw them away.
Of course.
Collards, lettuce, anything with a large leaf is going to have more lead in it than say carrots. The lead in carrots would be on the outside, and you would wash it off.
Okay.
So your problem in the city is you have a raised bed, and you can do that by just heaping the soil up 10 to 12 inches, putting down your cloth, and then what you want to do is plant in it, and you're going to use those vegetables, but you are going to make sure that you wash them completely, because the dust is the main problem with them. Not that they've absorbed them. There is a program, there are things you can use to remediate the soil that will take lead out eventually. And by the way, the city has a really good one. When you grow grass on a lot that has lead in it, every time you cut the grass, you're taking away some of the lead. You do not want to put that in a compost pile.
Okay.
What you want to do with that grass is dispose of it, throw it in the garbage, and they will dispose of it. And each time that you cut it, you're making the lead exposure a little less, a little less, a little less. It does take a lot of time, but it is a good way to keep down the dust. And between the beds, we actually recommend that if you do raised beds, you do them approximately 4 by 8 feet. And that's very convenient too, because you can reach them from both sides. And you only need 10 to 12 inches of soil to grow almost anything. And you'll get better carrots in nice loose soil than you will in packed down concrete like dirt. So you can grow almost anything. I have some raised beds in the city that actually hold perennials, and those are plants that come back every year. And they're 30 years old. I've never had to do anything except maybe add some compost now and then.
Wow.
And they are 30 years old. Same thing with a vegetable garden, except that you're going to pull it up, because most vegetables are not perennial. They're annuals. You'll be planting them every single year. You'll be eating them, and you'll be enjoying them. And it's a lot of work. It's fun. It's a lot of work. But what we recommend between the beds, and you can probably feed a family of 4 through the summer on 4 by 8 foot beds. Okay. You could pack the stuff in. You've got a lot of nutrients in that soil. You probably don't even need to fertilize it if you have enough compost in there. And the main primary thing is to water, not just to water and water them for the period, for keeping them, giving them enough nutrients from the water. But what you want to do is wash them off. You want to wash off any dust that occurs on these plants. The dust is the primary source of contamination, as I said. When those little particles in the soil come up, when rocks come up, once they put a house on a property, they pull it down, the foundation is there, and you'll find for years in these lots that the rocks keep coming up every year. Along with them come the paint chips.
Right.
So you're walking on this grass, and it does contain
whatever
contaminants are in there.
Wow.
And when you have the contaminants there, you're walking and you're squashing the grass. It's getting on your feet. You're taking it in the house. You're putting it on your hands. It doesn't mean that every time you get a bad wind that you're going to have to go out and wash down your vegetables or anything like that, because most vegetables are not going to absorb them. They will have them on the surface, but you'll be washing them off.
Okay.
And I would wash very carefully lettuce and anything else, but naturally we do that anyway. But the best thing to do with a raised bed is to put something in there that you can mow, or if you don't have grass there, you could put down straw, you could put down mulch. We recommend mulch.
Okay.
Sometimes you can get it free from the city. The city, as I started to say before, the city's doing a really good thing by all these empty lots that you see, they're mowed. One, they look great. Two, it's starting to remediate the soil.
Okay.
There are other plants that can remediate soil. We don't really recommend it, but it's a fact that sunflowers absorb all kinds of contaminants, not just lead, but they'll take cadmium and copper, other various heavy metals out of the soil. There's a program right now, a study in Chernobyl, where they're trying to remove some of the radiation by growing plants.
Wow.
There's a certain type of corn that will absorb it. What they're doing with these is they're growing the crops, they're disposing of them, they're not using them. However, there is a person who is trying to start a company. I don't know his name. I've read about him in some of the, one of the sources that I don't know how reliable it is. Most of the information that I'm giving you today comes from a university that does research. This information was off of the internet, and he is planning to mine the soil, mine the plants that come from contaminated soil for heavy metals. In other words, he would take the crop that he gets and he would put it into a container, a closed container, something sort of like a crematorium where there's not going to be any, there's only going to be ash left. Then they'll mine that ash for heavy metals. And if the price of copper keeps going up, he may have something going there.
Maybe.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future with our contaminated soils.
Okay, well, I definitely want to talk about maybe how some of the lead affects the children.
Affects
and
children?
A little bit more in depth with that. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly, for people who are watching, I wanted to try to maybe say how simple would it be to have a raised bed and start planting your own vegetables?
Very easy, very easy. If you're a community garden, Grassroots Gardens will supply you with the soil that you need, and they'll supply you with the lumber to build the beds.
Okay.
If you're on your own, you don't really need the beds. The wood around the beds. And by the way, you never use treated wood for a garden. It has arsenic in it mostly. They've taken some of it out, but you're not sure, so we recommend you do that. We also recommend, again, using the, it's not shade cloth, it's a weed cloth, and it will keep the weeds down too.
Okay.
You can, if you don't want to use the cloth, you can also use a layer of newspaper and cardboard and turn over the soil.
Okay.
Take out the grass first, turn over the soil, but I really prefer using the weed cloth.
Okay, well, very good. We'll be right back. We're going to continue to talk about this issue and maybe how some of the lead may be affecting our children and things like that. Turn in, we'll be having a really good time. Come on back on The Advocator.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust. Beauty.
I believe in my mom.
Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
The tooth fairy.
being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus.
Aliens, of course. I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
Welcome back. We're here with Marlene Liberty, and she's a master gardener. We're talking about how we can utilize our soil and so that we can plant really good vegetables and herbs. Right now, we're going to move a little bit away from the outside. We're going to move into the inside and talk about some of the ways to keep some of the lead out of our houses, or if we may have an older house, how we could definitely keep down any contaminants that could be harmful for our families. So, Marlene, what are some things that we could do to really cut back on any contamination within the house?
Within the house, most of the contamination comes from the outside of the house in the form of dust. And the best thing to do is have your children, have your husband, your other better half, take their shoes off when they come in. It tracks in on your feet. There's dust on your feet when you come in, and then you have to clean more.
Okay.
But we also recommend that the biggest source in a house are windows. Windows go up and down, and the window flakes, and on the windowsills you'll get dust. Wipe your windowsills down. Wash your floor, wipe your windowsills down weekly.
Okay.
And always when you're going to clean up any dust in your house that you suspect may have come from outside, use a wet cloth. You can also mix up a solution of 1 gallon of water to 1 cup of bleach and wipe down with that. That's a sure way to disinfect something. And you're not really disinfecting, but you're making sure that the dust doesn't spread when you just wipe it with a dry cloth.
Right.
If you're going to do any renovation at all, there is a bulletin that the health department of Erie County has. You can ask for the right way to renovate. No, that doesn't include if you're just going to scrape off a little tiny piece of lead paint, paint that's older that has
Right.
that has peeled. You do it, you keep it wet, and you cover it with paint. Most of the time, you can seal the inside of your house by painting.
Okay.
Your woodwork, your windows. Now, again, windows are a hard spot because you're going up and down. The windows are going up and down, and that sometimes will bring the dust from the edges of the windows where they were painted. And especially, again, this is houses that are older than 1978. And when you run your water, if you have lead pipes, we all have lead pipes, especially
Yeah.
in the city of Buffalo.
Yes.
We have lead pipes. In the morning especially, let your water run, especially your hot water. Never take hot water and use it on the stove. Use cold water. Hot water tanks store cadmium. Cadmium's a heavy metal. You don't want it in your body.
Right.
Run your cold water before you drink it. It's not that it's unsafe, it's just that it's been sitting in the pipes. So run your water for 30 seconds to a minute before you drink it, and never use hot water on the stove to boil the corn that you're going to grow outside in your great vegetable garden.
Okay, so one more time for those listeners who are still trying to keep up with what she said. We are not to use hot water.
You're not to start.
I think I'm an offender of that already, and I'm thinking right now, should I go to the hospital?
No, you shouldn't.
Okay.
No, you shouldn't. It's
Okay.
just over a lifetime of doing it, we don't know the effects. But we do know that cadmium is a heavy metal. It is in hot water tanks. And it's just a precaution that you can do that doesn't cost you any money.
Right.
Keep your family safe and do it that way. The rule is that children should be tested. There's an awful lot of information on lead paint, especially if you're in an older house, you're a renter. You can get information from the health department. There are programs that will have them come in. They'll cause an abatement to be made. If you have, I believe it's in an apartment, in a 2-bedroom apartment, I believe it's a 1.5 square foot area, don't quote me on this, but a 1.5 square foot area where there's been total 1.5 square area where there's been damage to the paint, especially in older homes. Now there are some apartments that have been totally renovated, and they have the newer. You'll notice that they'll have a lot of newer molding and stuff like that.
Yes.
But these gorgeous Victorian homes with the paint, there have been cases where children have been actually poisoned. Well, a family was doing a big renovation and they didn't move out. So the health department has all kinds of information on it. You can call them. They're happy to come out. They're doing some zip codes are being remediated right now. The exterior of buildings. And it's a really good program. I'm told that they have paint made available to lower income houses, lower income families that can't afford to paint a whole house. It's expensive.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
It's totally expensive to paint a whole house.
No, I know it's expensive to
Yeah.
paint. I
But
didn't know that
yes.
someone would help.
Oh
with the
yes,
cost.
someone will help. Yes, they're not going to help your landlord, but they'll help. They'll help the person that owns a home and can't really afford to get the paint for it.
Okay.
And this, we're talking exterior here. And
Well, I'm sorry, really quickly going back to the outside, a question keeps running past my mind. If someone wanted to plant outside, and they don't know if they're in one of these areas where the soil is contaminated, what
can
could
you
they
do
do?
a test?
Oh, yes. Well, could they?
You can
could
do a
someone
test.
test it, or how much does that cost?
Well, the safe thing to assume is that, yeah, there's a little bit of lead in the soil.
Okay.
The second thing to assume is, gee, I should be very careful because it might be more than I think it is. And if you want to test, you can go to Cornell Cooperative Extension, and they will send it to Cornell University, they will do a test for lead in your soil for $12. There is a method of gathering that soil so that it can be tested completely. And then what you want to do is follow their directions. Again, it's about $12. They don't recommend it in all cases, and it's very rare that you've got enough that you really, it's not a tolerable level. But just to be certain, if you're in a new house, or if they've torn down the house next door to you and your children are showing any effects at all whatsoever, I'd have it tested.
Okay.
But for the actual gardener, it's really not necessary. You just assume that it's there.
Okay.
And you don't want it in your house. You don't want the dirt in there anyway. But years ago, paint was made to shed. Paint was made to come off the side of a building, and I believe even some of the latex does now. And it would come off in little pieces as it rained, just to keep it looking whiter, just to keep it looking cleaner.
Oh.
And that's where you get a lot of the dust from. I've taken the lead paint course. My husband is a landlord, and there was a case where he had a building with new vinyl siding on it, and he had new glass block windows put in, and there was a concrete ledge that had never been painted, but it was only about a year or so old. But next door was a house that had to be completely, it had to be remediated. It had a lot of peeling paint, and the new paint that was on it was peeling and was taking off the old paint. Across from that, between them was a parking lot, and it was dusty.
Yes.
And this window had to be painted because the concrete was absorbing the dust.
Wow.
So you just assume that if there's a house in the neighborhood with a lot of peeling paint, that you have a problem with lead. It doesn't mean that you have to go and move. It doesn't mean that you have to sell your house. It doesn't mean that you're going to die tomorrow. It means that you have to be careful of what you bring into your house. You want to keep that house your home and your castle, and you don't want to think that there's anything in there that's going to harm you. But there are things in your home that really you probably don't realize. If you get pottery from certain places, it can have lead in the clay that it's made from. Some of the green dye inside of things that are made in China have been found to have lead in them. If you have any type of a mug or a bowl and it heats up when you put it in your microwave, you can assume that there's some kind of metal in it,
Okay.
usually lead, because lead is in clay. And any of the old mini blinds that are made before 1997 were known to contain lead. You want to be careful with those. I would take them down and dispose of them. I wouldn't even try to clean them.
Okay.
And they're a pain to clean anyway. So,
You
but
mean the old sharp ones that you could cut your finger on?
Yep.
Okay, yes.
yeah, and the vinyl ones. Actually, the vinyl itself had lead in it.
Oh, wow.
And as that was 1997, they came in from abroad, and they deteriorate, the dust, they form a dust, and then naturally those blinds accumulate dust anyway. There's no
Right.
way you can keep them all clean.
Right.
So it's a good idea to take those down once a year and take them outside and hose them down.
Okay.
And let them dry, and there's a good source of dust, and it keeps your windows from getting the dust too. So main thing is floors. If you have a child, a toddler who's on the floor climbing around, you want to I used to wash, and I didn't do it because I knew of anything of lead. I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of a little kid crawling in something that was dirty.
You're a
So I
mother.
used to wash, my daughter had said something about me. She remembers that I always wash the floor every day. Well, I did. But, and my children grew up in houses with lead paint in them because nobody realized it was a problem then.
Right.
And they suffered no ill effects. But the cleaner you keep your house, the more healthy your children are, the more healthy your diet, the more healthy your children are. If you have a very fat-free, not a very fat-free, that's the wrong thing to say. If you have a diet that is rich in vegetables, fruits, the right things that you're supposed to eat, vitamin C in particular, it will keep you from, it will keep you from ingesting, no, that's not the right word. It will keep you from suffering the effects of lead.
Okay. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And it keeps your body from absorbing lead. The better your diet, the less you'll absorb it. And it just like a natural defense. But
Right.
again, vitamin C, the lesser amount of fats in your diet, the better off you are, and proper nutrition.
Right, and speaking of the proper nutrition, once again, that's the reason a lot of people are trying to plant their own food. So what's a couple of things that probably should not be planted?
The only real thing that I can think of that shouldn't be planted in soil, especially in the ground, if you're going to plant in the ground, is collard greens. They've a large leaf. Lettuce, anything with a large leaf,
Okay.
absorbs more of the heavy metals than something like a potato or a corn or tomatoes. Tomatoes are fine.
Okay.
The acid actually tomatoes are full of vitamin C, so they'd be less likely to have lead on them than any of the other vegetables.
Okay, wow,
So-
thank you so much. You have been speaking with Donald Capers as your host. Also, we've had Master Gardener Marlene Liberty here talking about cleaning up our soil and being healthier. So we want to thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit and speaking and listening to us, rather. We hope that you can come back here, same time, same channel, if you will. And we're going to make sure that we bring you some really, really interesting topics. So do not miss us, all right? Thank you and have a nice night.